think she was probably the most soft-spoken, inherently kind person. You knew there was nothing to fear from her, nothing at all to fear. You could tell her anything, you could share anything. There was nothing at all ever to. She's not going to gossip. She's not going to do anything unpleasant. She was never even displaying any sort. I mean, she didn't show real affection. She showed concern, but not affection. She wasn't the type of person that puts her hand on your shoulder and says, "I'm sorry, you're not feeling well today," or something. No, she looks at your aura and she sees something out of balance, and then she just repairs it. That's the feeling that she's so advanced that she just has pure humility. She knows what her job is, and she doesn't need to talk. She doesn't need to advertise. She doesn't need to bang a drum or something. That's just the opposite of what you see on the lecture circuit. I didn't regard Morrnah as my teacher, but rather as a mentor. So she was someone, like I said, I respected her tremendously. I would have done anything reasonable ever to help her. If she had any need, I would have bent over backwards to do anything. But there were times where I would say to her, like, I know you're seeing this from your perspective, but the rational mind doesn't know what to do with it.
On June 28, I had the honor to interview Ingrid Naiman on the phone. She gave some valuable insights into the Morrnah Simeona that few people know. Ingrid and Mauna met in Honolulu in the 1970s. They enjoyed an interesting and important relationship for a number of years. Their relationship continued after Ingrid moved to the mainland. Morrnah often visited her in Kona, and Ingrid visited Morrnah on Oahu and later in New Mexico. Ingrid regards Morrnah as one of her most important mentors in life. She is a medical astrologer, music therapist, herbalist, with a special interest in Ayurvedic medicine. She is also a dark field microscopist. She developed her own technique and understanding of blood behavior and the action of food and herbs on both erythrocytes and immune cells. Ingrid has a bachelor's degree from the East-West Center in Asian Studies in 1962, an MA from Yale University in 1964. She has awarded 2 honorary doctorates in Copenhagen and Sri Lanka. Hi, Ingrid. Can you tell us how did you meet Morrnah for the first time?
So what happened was I gave a talk in Honolulu, and it was on some esoteric topic. I don't remember the topic anymore. And she came as an attendee. And that's where she gave me the Mailele. So we had never met before. She arrived quite early, and I think we were just sort of maybe alone in the building. And she made a statement at the time that the lei needed to be tied at the bottom, which was not the normal custom. And I was just overwhelmed. I knew immediately she was someone very, very special, but I didn't know anything at all about her. I'd never heard her name. I'd never seen her before. It was just out of the blue. She had a very, very close relationship with her father. I think she hardly ever spoke about her mother, but the first really important incident that I remember her talking about her childhood was that angels were coming to her in her sleep and teaching her healing. And she was outdoors and telling her father what the angels had been teaching her. She was 3 years old at the time, and a truck ran over her dog. She, of course, the 3-year-old came out, right? She was crying, and then her father said, you have your first patient. Just do what the angels told you. And the dog recovered completely. And the method that was used, as I understood it, now this is maybe not 100% state fact, but I think it's very close to correct. He would begin by straightening every line in the aura, what's called nadi, would be absolutely perpendicular to the body. And then once she had all those lines straight, she would transfer her own energy, mana, or what in, if you're Indian, you would say prana, which would transfer that into the patient, or in this case, the dog. And so the dog recovered 100% perfectly. And so her career began very, very young. And she had a practice at a hotel in Honolulu. It was a long time ago. It was one of the prominent hotels where dignitaries stayed. And she had like presidents and, VIPs from all over the world that were coming for the lomi lomi, which is the Hawaiian form of massage.
I think she used to run a house spa at the Kahala Hilton Hotel and the Royal Hawaiian Hotel.
Okay, you're probably correct. Like I said, I wasn't sure. I was the ones that's not in the discount place, right?
Have you ever been to her spa?
No, I met her after that phase of her life. She was a travel agent at the time that I knew her. We went to the concert together with, remember the Symposium on Humanity? So we went to the Honolulu celebration, and Morrnah was this time, she was sitting on my left. And there was a woman on stage, singer, whose profile was to the audience. So her right side was facing the audience. And when she inhaled, there was something that looked like a parachute coming out behind, about 70 feet long. And when she exhaled, the parachute reversed and came to the front of her. And I whispered to Morrnah, "Is that an aura?" She said, "Yes, but she's only 1/16 Hawaiian." Yeah. And as far as I always understood, Morrnah was pure Hawaiian. I mean, that's kind of rare because in Hawaii, we call them chop suey, right? A little bit of this and a little bit of that. But she was supposedly pure Hawaiian. And so someone at the retreat had come to me and said, Morrnah doesn't have an aura. And I said, "Oh, really? I think you're standing inside it." She said, "Look, I'm clairvoyant and I know when I see an aura, and she doesn't have an aura." And I said, "I suggest you go up the mountain and then have a look." She did. And she said, "You're right. Her aura covers practically a quarter of the island." I went to visit her at the agency, and we hadn't seen each other for a while. I remember I was living in Kona. She was living in Honolulu. And so she said, "Which one of your dogs died?" And I said, "Kilty." And I said, "Why do you ask me?" She said, "Well, there's a white dog sitting outside on the sidewalk." And I had seen her work with ghosts before, like on our land in Kona, we had a lot of ghosts, really a lot of ghosts. And she would help move them into other dimensions. And so my first question was, "Is Kilki earthbound?" And she said, "Oh, let me see." And she did her usual thing where she closed her eyes and went into, I don't know, kind of maybe an altered state of consciousness. And then she said, "He says to tell you it's his pleasure to stay with you until the end of time." One day she came and she said, "What's going on with?" And I said, "Well, what do you see?" And she said, "Well, who's the gladiator?" And I said, "Oh, she just went to a workshop with someone and she met somebody, but I haven't met him yet." And she said, "Doesn't she know who she is?" And I said, "Morrnah, none of us know who we are. We're waiting for you to tell us." And she was like, Because these things are so obvious. How can you not know that this guy isn't the right one for you? But she always knew. And I have strange vision, and at one time when I knew her, I was seeing through walls, and if I was reading a book, I could see my hand holding the book as well as the print on the book. And then I'd look up and I'd see through the bookshelf and then the kitchen on the other side of the wall. And I would rub my eyes and wonder what's going on. And then I was just walking with her one day. I hadn't told her about this, and she said, this vision you have is going to be very useful someday when people are looking for water. And so, she knew that something I hadn't told her at all.
Nothing to hide in front of her. She knows everything.
Yeah, but how she knew and how she interpreted what was not ever totally clear to anyone else. So now I brought up the subject of ghosts. So we lived my mother and I lived in this, it's called Papa Bay Estate. We had two houses. I had a little house of my own on the same property. And one morning I saw these ghosts coming down the mountain. And when they would come down the mountain, they looked like a cloud at first, right? It was like descending. And then as they got closer to the house, you could see individuals with, and they were making music on a nose flute. I went to my mother and I said, well, what's going on? And she said, well, there's a religious holiday today for them, and they're all going down to the beach. And she said, you'll see them again in the evening when they come back up the mountain. And sure enough, sunset, and the ghosts came back and went up the mountain. And there was one in particular that wasn't sort of always with the group, that every time something was missing, we just said the big Hawaiian moved it. We all saw this ghost. We didn't know what he's doing there. But she would talk to these ghosts and say, you should be moving into another dimension now. They didn't know they're dead, right? They have no understanding. They see everything and they feel everything and they recognize it. So they haven't adjusted to the fact that, not in a physical body anymore. They need to go to another dimension. And she told me some of them had been earthbound for about 800 years. There's a very famous astrologer named Isabel Hickey, happened to have the same birthday as myself. And she visited Hawaii. She was heavily into Huna. And she had a traveling companion. My mother really wanted to talk to her. And so she told me to take the traveling companion to my house, and she could be alone with Izzy for a while. So the minute she walked into my house, she started crying, just burst into tears. And I said, what's going on? And she said, he's blaming me. He's my husband. And he's saying, you took a vow for all eternity never to have another lover, and I've been waiting for you here for hundreds of years. And then her story came out that she was married, been married 20 years, never consummated the marriage.
Wow.
I couldn't believe how the pieces started fitting together. And so this was the big Hawaiian that, we had been blaming for moving the wheelbarrow or something else. The ladder's gone, who last saw the ladder? So this was her great love from her past life. And I was, of course, the next thing I was going to ask is, what's going to happen when she goes back to her husband? It's like now, it's going to be either finally she's free of this former commitment, or she is still in love with the ghost, right? But this was just corroboration that everything Morrnah had been doing was authentic. I mean, that in the dimension in which he was functioning, this was reality. You can imagine we're driving south on the highway between Santa Fe and Albuquerque, there's no traffic. I mean, just wide open spaces. And then she suddenly screams like I'm hitting something. Oh, and I don't, and it's like, I thought I was a really good driver, and I pulled over the side of the road, and I said, what's the matter? And she said, you nearly hit a dinosaur. And I said, an etheric dinosaur, right? She said, well, yeah, but you nearly hit him. And I said, I'm so sorry, I didn't see him, But she saw him, and I think she couldn't turn it off, and that's the difference. I have etheric vision sometimes, and so I know what it is, but it's not constant. But I think with Morrnah, it never turned off. It was just the normal way of seeing both what the conventional reality and the altered reality.
Right. Yeah. Well, we probably hit a lot of dinosaurs driving on the highway.
Yeah. But I mean, that was such an extraordinary thing, because I mean, she was really, I mean, she's so calm, was so calm as a person, right? So to streak, like, careful, it's like, it's like, this was way out of her normal behavioral range. And she asked me very softly one day, like, how many planets do you use in your horoscope? And I said, well, 10, 8 plus the sun and moon. And she said, can you really tell anything by that? And I looked at her and I said, how many planets are there, Morrnah? And she said, well, 70. I said, you counting etheric planets? And she said, yeah, of course I'm counting the etheric planets. She said, you don't use them? And I said, we don't know they're there. The astronomers don't know they're there, and the astrologers don't know they're there. So no, we're not using them. She was really, it was confusing to her. If she knows something so perfectly and can't understand that the other person can't see it at all, doesn't know. I had a guest staying with me named Tomiko, and Morrnah was visiting, staying in my mother's house. And in the morning, I heard some kind of chime, some really beautiful music. And I thought Tomiko was making the noise. She thought I was. So we had been really quiet, not disturbing each other for like maybe 2 hours. And then finally we decided, no, this is not coming from our house. It's coming from Mom's house. And so we went over, and I said, I've been hearing beautiful music for the last 2 hours. Can I see the instrument? Morrnah said, oh, I'm sorry. I was in Vienna, and I saw these crystal chimes, and I couldn't figure out how to pack them in my suitcase. So she said, I just memorized how to make them. And she said, I manifested them, but I already demanifested them. So in other words, she just made things out of nothing.
Right.
Yeah. At that retreat, the Hawaiian retreat, and at the Aspen Institute in Nalehu or Punalu'u, it's called, whichever name they use, there was an alert of a tidal wave. And there had been one actual tidal wave while the place was under construction, and it had carried the furniture and the dining room out to sea. And so there was an evacuation warning. And I thought, oh, Morrnah's going to probably take care of this. So I saw her walking out towards the ocean, and I tiptoed behind her. I knew she knew I was there, but I knew she was never going to turn around and look me in the eyes. And so she put her hands out, and the water just went down. And we all went back to the Aspen Institute, and a couple of people arrived in their swimming suits, and they said, the funniest thing just happened. We were swimming, and the sea got really rough, and then all of a sudden it was calm, and we could, get out of there safely. They said, I don't know what happened. I know what happened.
Right.
Totally humble. I mean, she never said something like, I did this, or I'll take care of it. She would just disappear and silently do something. Then the next big step, I think, was this astrological retreat that you mentioned. And I was at the Congress of Astrological Organizations and been out of the room because a friend of mine from Tibet was there and we were talking. And when I came back in the room, they said, well, they've decided to have the next conference in Hawaii. And I said, oh, great. And they said, no, you have to volunteer now, something to help, And so I said, oh, well, just let me know what I can do to make this move forward. And so, among other things, we decided to include some Hawaiiana. And then I was thinking, well, the first person to invite would be Will Kuselka from the Bishop Museum. Well, he was the astronomer for the museum and was used to taking tourists to planetariums to look at the stars and so on, and then talk about Hawaiian navigation and mythology. And so Will invited me to come to his home for dinner. It was on the top of Mount Angeles on Oahu. And he said, well, by all means, bring a guest, it's sort of like bring a date. And I invited Morrnah, and she was extremely rude to her. I was shocked, and I just ready to say something. And Morrnah put her hand on my knee and sort of, it's okay, you don't have to do anything. I can handle this. But it was a racial thing. And I was just horrified that someone that was so deeply involved in Hawaiiana was meeting a kahuna of her caliber and was rude to her. And there's a kind of cute follow-up to this because at the retreat, Will was giving a talk about Hawaiian astronomy, and then we were all going to go out. He said something like, and we'll go out and look at the sky, and then we'll go to Mauna Kea, the observatory at the top of Mauna Kea. And it was total cloud cover. And Morrnah and I were sitting in the upper tier of this, and it's a theater where the speakers at the base, and then the stairs or I don't know, seating that goes up, so you're looking down at the speaker. And she was on my right, and she closed her eyes, and then when she opened them, I'd seen her do this many times by that time. And he said, "Did he say it?" I said, "Yes." He said, "At 10 minutes to 9, Morrnah's going to move the clouds, and then we'll all go out and look at the stars." And I told Will that he said that. He said, "I never said it." I said, "You said it." So we've got you on tape that you said it. He said, "I never would have said anything like that." I said, "But you said it."
Right.
So, that was her revenge. And it was it was so cute and it was so harmless. But she did move the clouds. And we did go outside and we did see the stars. And so it was kind of, just one of many amazing things that happened during our very long connection.
So, how would Will know that, in 10 minutes, Mornah's going to move the clouds?
She put it into his mind.
Oh, I see.
Explanation that she put it into his mind to make him say something he never would have otherwise said. My Ayurvedic teacher was an Indian named Dr. Sri Krishna Kashyap. He was the direct descendant of the eldest of the 7 rishis, so very, very high caste. And Morrnah came to visit, and I was really eager to introduce the two of them. And they had the most incredible, warm connection with each other. It was just like, finally they met their equals in life. And, I could just sit in the background and watch how happy they were. They were really, really in a state of bliss. The experience in Albuquerque with the shaman and the walk-ins, that was also extraordinary. I mean, everything being with Morrnah was a learning experience, right? It's like I would sit quietly and watch. And then on the way home, we'd talk about it. Like, Morrnah, I sat with that walk-in. I felt like he didn't have any emotions. Like he had a lot of intelligence, but he wasn't like somebody that has feelings or attachments or family or friends or he's just a very independent energy that you don't feel like you have a desire to get to know him or anything. And she would say, yeah, his astral body isn't with him.
I have never heard of a term walk-in, in this context. So what is a walk-in?
This is usually somebody has a really bad accident and there's a question about whether they're willing to go through the ordeal of recovering from this tremendous injury, or whether they want to leave the body. And then if they do leave, someone from the discarnate world may decide, okay, I'll take that body. And, it might be that the person is 16 years old, 20 years old, something. They don't have to go through childhood then, but they don't have the memories of the person who did go through childhood. So they're taking over the physical body without integrating the astral body.
What about the alien? Did you really meet an alien? Or?
I think that one of the beings in the room was an alien, but was just energy was darting around all the time. And so I asked Morrnah about that, and it was like he's still at a dimension where he hasn't created a physicality. There's definitely an energy, was definitely paying attention to the conversation, definitely participating. For me, he wasn't visible as a human being. It was just visible as like, almost like streaks of light moving around all the time. But she apparently saw him as an entity. Strange things happened around her too. When we went up to Mauna Kea, and it was very, very interesting. And I can't remember how many cars we had, but we had more than I think about 175 people, so probably really a lot of cars. And we've sort of been following each other on the road. And Morrnah was in my car. And on the way home, I saw a green light in the sky like a laser beam. And all of a sudden I had a flat tire. And I was down on the rim. And the tire had been cut like a laser. And it was a diagonal slash that went through both sides of the tire. And when I brought the tire to the garage, they just said, how did you do this? And I said, well, I didn't exactly. Something came out of the sky. I don't know. Yeah. And then there was another strange one after that. There was a meeting at somebody's house, Linda, and so I was driving a little bit north on the Belt Road in Hawaii to join the meeting. And Morrnah was already at Linda's house, and my car wouldn't go more than about 5-8 miles per hour. It felt like somebody was holding the back bumper. And I tried different gears. I tried pushing the accelerator, and it just wouldn't budge. And so I was unbelievably late. And then I told Linda and Morrnah and the other people there that something was like somebody was holding the bumper of my car. The car was perfect on the way home. It was like something didn't want me to attend the meeting. And he would always check out the energy. One of the things that he saw was black crystals. So if there had been an accident in a place, there might be just a few black crystals. If there was a huge battle, like a war, there would be a massive amount of black crystals. And I never saw the black crystals, so I just, Morrnah's talking about crystals again. And, it's like, file it, and then maybe one day it'll all make sense, but it doesn't make sense right now. And then one day I went for lunch with some guests from Switzerland, and the only vegetarian thing on the menu was a peace, so I ordered it. And I felt like I was getting kind of grumpy and not very polite. And by evening, I had a terrible fever, and I went to my housemate and said, you don't have a fever. You're not coming down with something. You have a past life memory. Somebody had poisoned me with mushrooms or mushrooms in the teeth in a past life. And this had created a kind of, what do you say, phobia. And so my housemate, who was a therapist, he didn't do exactly Lomio, did past life memory retrieval. And all of a sudden I saw a blue angel with silver wings come down and say, I'm going to take care of this now. And I saw the black crystals all over the place, and the angel collected the crystals. Oh. So there are such a thing as black crystals, right? And Morrnah told me she had to clear all of these black crystals from World War II, both in Japan and Germany. And when I read that she died in Germany, I was just like, why didn't she get more help? Why? This is a big undertaking.
How did you hear about her passing away in Germany?
I think I tried to update something, and maybe I found it on the internet. Since then I've, a little more detail has gone. Yeah, but I know that from what she told me, she had to deal with all of the negative energy from the Third Reich. I don't know if you knew she got an award from the Japanese government for what she did in Japan. That she was there as a guest of the Japanese government to clear everything from World War II.
Yeah, I try to find. I know she's been to Japan, but I never pinned down what year she was there.
I don't know. I can't tell you for sure. I do know that she was giving a Living Treasure Award, and maybe that would be right after her trip or something. And the Living Treasure Award, there might be some date on that.
That in Hawaii, yeah, that was 1983.
I have the absolute highest regard for Morrnah. I think she was maybe one of the most important people in my life, and I respect her with all my heart and all my soul. But sometimes I didn't agree with her. I just felt like maybe I don't get it. Maybe she's seeing something I'm not seeing, but I'm still got some amount of independence here, and so am I being blind or willful? I don't know, but we didn't always understand her.
Thank you, Ingrid. These are fascinating, untold stories about Morrnah. For the audience, this video is not meant to mystify Morrnah. But apart from her being the inventor of her Ho'oponopono, she is also a mystic that I think we should know about. Thank you for watching.